took a few months, but a guest that I was really hoping to have on the show again this year is back, and I am thrilled for it. But if you listen to the Shutdown Fullcast, and I do, not every episode, I got to be honest here, but I listen to a lot of them.
You value your own brain. That's only I understand.
I have too many podcasts to listen to, and so I have to
Sure.
like pick and choose. Like I don't know that there's outside of my fantasy football obsession. I'm not sure there's a show right now that I listen to every single episode of. Like I have
Sure.
to come. Um, but that is the voice of Ryan Nanni back here on the 1012. Ryan, welcome, sir.
Thank you. You said you wanted to talk in the off season, and in the strictest technical sense, we are coming in under the gun. So good job, I guess. Me, not really, but here we are all the same.
Look, the season hasn't started yet,
That's true.
so you know what? The due date, getting something turned in on the due date is still
That
technically on
counts.
time.
That
Okay,
counts. Yes,
you don't get it. You don't get a grade bump for pulling it in a week early,
that's
right?
true.
Teachers
That's
like,
true.
good job, suck up. Like you're gonna ask for homework at the end of the day too. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So, I have a random smattering of topics, and one that has been near and dear to my heart, and I don't feel like people have appreciated nearly enough yet, is these new conferences are going to not only present us with first time matchups. As I've said, there are 8 first time in college football history matchups in the Big 12 alone this season, and there's others across like the SEC and the ACC for sure, and the Big 10.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about some nationally, but I want to start in the Big 12. And some of them are first time matchups, and some of them are just like, if I told you 10 years ago that these two teams could be potentially playing to appear in a conference championship game together, you would have said,
Yeah.
put the bottle down, sir.
Yeah.
So I need to know from you, looking across the Big 12 schedule, like what are some of the, like if you were to rank the just weirdest, this is a conference game in the Big 12 this season, which ones for you stick out the most?
So if we're sticking to that, like you're telling this to yourself 10 years ago
Yes.
framework.
Mm-hmm. Even 5 years ago at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That this would work even better maybe for 5 years ago. I'm gonna go with a game that's not unexpected, and certainly a game that is not being played for the first time, not even close to it. If you had told me Utah is gonna play BYU in a Big 12 game, I would have so many questions. Number one, I would be like, why is Utah in the Big 12? They're still pretty new to the Pac-12. What happened? Did it go poorly for Utah? Did Utah get kicked out of the Pac-12? Second, I think people forget because when it happened a couple years ago, it just sort of like happened quickly and nobody really made a big fuss of it. But for years, the idea of BYU leaving independent status and being in a conference, which they had done before in like the 70s and 80s and early 90s, was just thrown around as like, that can't happen. Like the politics of it are weird, and figuring out like how they're going to line it up with a religious schedule and this, that, and like, it was just like, no, you can't and now it's just fine. So that's when it sticks out to me that like, I think I would probably have the most questions of like, what happened to get us here? If you want one that's just like, what are we talking about? Colorado Cincinnati is really good. It's because it's the same thing with Utah of like, but you left, and with Utah, it's Utah, it's just sort of like, okay, you've jumped conferences several times, whatever. Colorado leaving the Big 12 was a very big deal, especially because at the time it looked like, oh, this is the sign that everybody's going to the Pac-16. How is Colorado here? How is Cincinnati here? Why is this a conference game? Like those are two that stick out to me as like really hard to grapple with from that. Because here's the other thing. When you phrase it to me 10 years, I was like, well, maybe there's a West Virginia game. West Virginia's been here longer than that. Like weirdly 10 years ago, me would have to just be like, yes, West Virginia is a Big 12 member. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that proves like conference realignment's weird and you can get used to it, or if West Virginia is like, yeah, sometimes you never get totally used to it on either side. Like I don't think anybody has fully, and almost every conference has a team like this. I don't think everybody has like fully embraced Big 12 member West Virginia as a concept.
So you've hit a couple of points I'm going to touch
Yes,
on. We'll start
yes,
with the
yes,
West Virginia
please.
one. And the more I
Okay.
talk to West Virginia fans, like even West Virginia fans are like, thank you for not leaving us out in the, in the cold,
In the
barren
Big East cold. Yeah.
Russian wasteland of college football,
Yeah.
but also like, man, we sure would rather play Pitt and Penn State
Yep.
and Big East rivals every year. Not Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not a rival. Don't call them
Right.
that. West Virginia gets very upset. Look at their record. Yeah, look at the Penn State record, but you call that a rival. But like West Virginia fans still like and I think that they're better now. Like I really think like the last few years have really brought all of Big 12 fandom like together. It really is that like we can pick on each other, but if you talk any crap to us whatsoever, we will virtually pummel you into oblivion.
Yeah.
Only the truest sickos, delusionals, are the ones who are able to survive the onslaught on Twitter that we will descend upon you and your family and your friends. So like West Virginia, but I get it. It's still kind of like, yeah, they're in the Big 12,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like a Big 12. Like we talk about the angry eight, the eight that are left over. We're really like, it's like even the Texas schools to some extent. And you're like, yeah, but it's really like OSU, Kansas State, Iowa State, Kansas. Like we can even talk about Texas Tech because they've been in the Big 12 the whole time. West Virginia's still kind of there. So I get that mindset of like, is it ever really going to be normal for those of us who remember like a bike? We've now reached the age of like, back in my day,
The before
West
times.
Virginia
Yes.
and Rich Rodriguez, and you're like, all right, Grandpa, go sit down and watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
The BYU Utah thing, it's not just that it's weird that they're in the Big 12.
Yes.
It's weird that they're in the same conference, period. And like I have had told to me by multiple people, like one of the reasons that it's believed that Utah fans have been so anti Big 12 is that they have to go they're being forced, drug into joining a conference that not only is BYU there, BYU is there before them. It's not like Utah got there first and then said, fine, you can invite BYU. Like
Yes,
BYU is
right.
already there and they're going, they're at the airport as the
Right.
plane is landing going, welcome.
Right.
Come and join
Right.
our
Right.
conference. Doesn't matter
Right.
that BYU's been here for 1 year.
Utah is showing up to the wedding a little late, looking at the seating chart and being like, God, oh my, are you serious?
You put us at BYU's table? Oh. And they ate all the shrimp.
Uh-huh.
Jerks.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. They drank all the Dr. Pepper. So, like, I get all that. Colorado Cincinnati is great. Like, it's not technically a first time matchup. They played once in 1972. But like Colorado Cincinnati, Arizona West Virginia, and Utah UCF are the three that I'm like, in what world should those three teams be in a conference together that's not Conference USA? Like that, you say Conference USA, you say, okay, that makes sense. I mean, the world has exploded and Conference USA just has 100 teams in it. But like, they're in a what? They share a conference?
They all sound like December 22nd bowl games.
Yes.
Is what they sound like. Like a game you'd want to watch and a game you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. They don't sound like these are conference foes with shared values and history and all of that.
Shared history is always said with air quotes. I know that podcasting is a visual medium, so everyone can see that. But you can mentally be like, he said shared history. I see the air quotes. I know they're there. It isn't understood. Look, it is the Big 12 is weird. No, but every conference, like outside of the SEC, is weird now. And the SEC just has the benefit of being.
The SEC is still weird. It just it looks less weird comparatively. Like
on a map.
It is weird. It is weird that Oklahoma's in the SEC.
Yes.
It is weird. But it is less weird than Oregon being in the Big Ten or Stanford being in the ACC.
And this is where I want to transition to everything else, because it's like, Big 12, you guys don't make any sense. I'm sorry, hold up a second. Let's just make sure that we understand this. That the Big 12 looks weird. The ACC has two Pacific Coast teams and a team from Dallas that's not getting a paycheck just so that they can get invited.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, forget the fact that the Big Ten and to the West Virginia, the Big 12 point, has Maryland and Rutgers, which will
Mm-hmm.
always be ACC teams
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or Big Ten East, whatever.
Rutgers would
Yeah.
love to be an ACC team in its past, but yeah.
Now you have USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. And not only
Mm-hmm.
did you pick 2 teams from the West Coast, did you pick, or 4 teams from the West Coast, did you pick 4 teams that are as far from each other on the West Coast,
Yeah.
like north to south, as you possibly
Yeah.
could?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's a little better adding Oregon and Washington than just having originally how it was originally set up with just USC and UCLA. Like that would have felt more like the ACC plan. Here's our weird California outpost, and sometimes you got to go to it. Sorry, tough to deal with. Yeah. So I mean, I guess the good news is we're now in the phase, my favorite phase of realignment, and this has happened like 4 times at this point, where the conferences are all like, well, we're done. We're going to be done for now. You're done until you're not when it comes to conference realignment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if things really blow up with Clemson and Florida State as they're suing the ACC, somebody may do something there. I know, like right now, every conference is like, well, we're waiting and seeing what happens. But the way this actually works, I think most of the time, is you make a move in conference realignment because you're trying to jump somebody else. You are trying not to be last in line. Like the Big 12 was, I think, did a very good job of not being absolutely last in line the way the Pac 12 was. But the Big 12 definitely was making reactive moves. And I don't think most conferences want to be in that situation. I think the SEC would rather, for instance, say, like, we are affirmatively bringing in Clemson and Florida State than having to sort of panic and being like, I don't know, West Virginia and UVA or UNC. What should we do here? Like, so maybe we don't have to like grapple with the weirdness of it too much because in the next 5 years it'll just all change again.
But it's only going to keep getting weirder. And I,
Yeah.
like, at this point, I forget which commissioner made the comment of like, we're not going to bring any school in. No, you just don't want to be the bad guy again, because
Right.
you were just the bad guy last time for
Right.
trying to almost destroying the Big 12 and then actually destroying the Pac 12. And so you don't want to be the villain. So it's like, we're not going to incentivize them to leave. But when they do, I
Our
mean, we're
door,
not going to
yeah,
say no.
we would pick up the phone, of
Right.
course.
Like
Yeah.
Clemson, Florida State, you're good. I know North Carolina is probably going to get picked up somewhere.
Yeah.
As the story I've heard is like they were supposed to go to the SEC, and then they decided not to, and so that's the only reason that Missouri is now in the SEC, is because North Carolina said, "Nah, we're going to stay here in the ACC." A decision I'm sure that they're
Super happy
thrilled
with.
they made at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, and because we've talked about weird matchups, shout out to FB Schedules. I do love them. They are the go-to. We're trying to like figure out non-con matchups and schedules and everything in the future. I appreciate it. But they put out an article.
I love the helmet schedule. The helmet schedule I have to live and die by, especially now that it's like I have to scroll the helmet schedule.
Who's wearing who and when? Okay. Is that a Oh, and you get, Utah, Baylor, and Arizona, Kansas State this year. That is
Yeah.
a conference game, but it's a non-conference game. So that's also very helpful.
Sure. Houston's playing Oklahoma this year. It's not a conference game now.
It's yay. They put out this like most anticipated first ever meetings in college football, and I'm not gonna like, they didn't put any Big 12 games in here. And I don't mean to make fun of them, but there's a couple they included that feel like this article was written by the members of the Sickos committee. And there's 2 I want to highlight as like, this is a conference game. What is happening? One is Indiana at UCLA. Please help me understand how Indiana at UCLA is an anticipated first time matchup in college football.
I was almost there until you said the last 2 words. College basketball?
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Yes,
like,
perfect.
We can all get on board for what these programs were and hope to be again. Yeah, I mean, Indiana fans get to go to the Rose Bowl. I that that's the thing that's going to get thrown out a lot about like these schools that haven't, either haven't been to the Rose Bowl recently or maybe haven't been to the Rose Bowl at all for the capital R capital B Rose Bowl get to go now. I can tell you from talking to UCLA fans, it's a very different experience. It's not the same thing as we are going to play on January 1st. It doesn't mean it won't be fun, and it doesn't mean that the weather won't be awesome, but that's what I got for you.
Is that like driving the what's it National Lampoon's Vacation, except that you get there just to look at it and then it's not open, you just
Brew it
drive
out
away.
front, should have told you.
Okay, there's actually three in here. One of them is Stanford at Syracuse. Speaking of weird conference games.
I mean, sure. Like that's yeah, man. Stanford, it's not Stanford that worries me so much with this, but like Cal is interesting to me, and SMU to some extent as well. Cal and SMU, I'm like, well, these are programs that like maybe, I mean, SMU won their conference last year. Cal had some good wins down the stretch and is always like under the current leadership is always like, are they about to figure it out or no? Like Jaden Knott's an awesome running back. I am curious to see how it goes, and I'm remembering like the when Mizzou won the East 2 years in a row shortly after they joined the SEC. Like what's gonna happen if like Cal comes through? I don't think Stanford's ready to do it this year. But what do you do if you're an ACC team and you're like, oh cool, Cal won 5 conference games this year. We hate this. This sucks. This is deeply unpleasant for it. That's the part of realignment that I think people aren't always ready for, because most of the time, at least at the beginning, when you have new schools come in, they kind of struggle. Like that was certainly true with the Big 12 last year. The schools that came in, like it took a while before one of them took a conference win, especially a conference win that wasn't off one of the other new schools.
Correct.
But like if you have like, I don't know what Nebraska thought they were going to do in the Big 10 and what they went to a conference championship game early and all that. Like, I think it kind of sucks. I think it's kind of a bad time for everybody who's a legacy member. I would be delighted if Cal won the ACC this year. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my God. Can you as much as I'm gonna just trash talk on SMU fans, like SMU winning the ACC this year
Yes.
would be
Yes.
the funny the team you just let in and doesn't you aren't even paying just like shows up and wins the conference, like wins the conference championship game over like Clemson. Like,
Uh-huh.
would anything get Clemson to like pay their lawyers more to get them out faster than SMU beats them in the conference championship game? Like, this is what have we become?
Yeah.
Where are we today? Okay, the last one I have to mention is this is the most like I keep saying Sickos Committee. If the Sickos Committee were to draw up a conference game out of back in like 2008, it's Rutgers at USC.
That is also, what is the kick time of that game?
It's October 25th, so I don't think there's a kick time yet.
I think it has one. I think
Or
it's
does
like
it?
I think it's
It's a
like
Friday.
I
Okay.
think it's like 9 p.m. I think it's like 7 p.m. Pacific or something like that. Like it's a night game locally, which means it's like on in the middle of the night on the East Coast or
It is.
something.
It is an okay. It is. It is a Friday night Fox game with an
Yeah.
11 p.m. Eastern Standard
Eastern.
Time kickoff. So for Rutgers fans, the game will not kick
Yeah.
off until 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Yeah. And like at least I will say this in a partial defense of this game and others like it existing. At least college football can occasionally spit out something that you're like, what is happening here? Why does this exist? Like you can't get that in the NFL. You can't get
No.
that in pro sports. It's just like, yeah, I understand. The best you can do is like, oh, we're having a baseball game at Bristol Motor Speedway. Cool, whatever. But like Rutgers has to play at 11 p.m. Eastern time against USC. And because it's USC, the current vintage, we might have to watch it to see if Rutgers beats USC in the middle of the night. Like, I see the appeal there, but you're right. It is a very sicko space appeal.
Make sure you don't have plans for Saturday morning, except to sober up. Okay. Now that we've made fun of everybody, the Big 12 is 16 teams this year. We've got 4 programs in their sophomore season. We got 4 programs in their freshman year. Yes, I'm calling Colorado as a 4 as a freshman. You've been gone for long enough. It's you're not really the Big 12 Colorado.
Your credits don't transfer
No,
anymore.
they don't. We've what is it? Forget it. I can't think of the term. We'll just move on. Looking at this Big 12 and this wacky schedule and weird games and 8 first-time all-time matchups, 5 of which include UCF, no surprise there. Like what excites you most about the Big 12 conference like this year and this 16 team thing that exists now?
I'm going to defer on the second question because I want to see how it shakes out before I know like what to make of the Big 12. I think, well, I'll kind of answer it. I think there is a chance that the Big 12 has successfully navigated things such that you have your Big 2, the Big 10 and the SEC, but they have done enough to stay in the conversation nationally that people are like, you can't completely write this conference off. You can't treat them the way we treat Conference USA, the Sun Belt, the MAC, like, and I think there are plenty of fans of those programs who are like, we get way too little, or those conferences that are like, we get way too little credit for the quality of football we play. But the Big 12 doesn't want to be considered in that level, and I think they are like holding serve, so to speak, with who they have added and what those teams look like right now and in the like very short-term future. What I'm excited about for this season is like the wide openness of it all. Like you could give me, I don't know. I honestly don't know if there's a conference championship matchup that you could give me that I could say, I can't see that path. I can't see how that happens. There are maybe a couple where I'm like, this is a real stretch. Like if you gave me Arizona State BYU, I would say like the way those programs are right now, I don't think you can do there. But like for every other conference, or at least I would say definitely the Big 10 and the SEC, and to some extent the ACC, the permutations are like, here are the 6, maybe 7 matchups that we think are on the table. The Big 12, it's much larger than that. It's like probably 30 matchups at least that you could say like, yeah, there's a plausible case for this. Like Kansas and Kansas State are both really interesting. That doesn't usually happen in the Big 12. Oklahoma State is still really interesting. Of the schools coming in, like Arizona had a great season last year. I know they've lost their coach, but like it's still like a promising start. Colorado is a wild card that's probably the most diplomatic way that I can put it. Utah has an incredible track record over the last 5 years. The schools that the sophomore schools that you mentioned, like UCF is kind of in that, like, are they, they have a really interesting transfer quarterback coming in. Are they about to sort of like unlock things there? Is Gus like going to start pouring gas on the offense? Cincinnati, like Scott Satterfield really better get that program in a better position. Houston made what I think was a really good hire. Yeah, it's like it feels like a little bit of an embarrassment of interesting things to look at in the Big 12. And as a result, like I think it will be appointment viewing very deep into the season. Like obviously losing Oklahoma and Texas sucks from a brand and finance standpoint. But for better or worse, for a lot of years there, the national conversation of the Big 12 kind of depended on, did Texas fall on its face during the regular season, and did Oklahoma fall on its face during bowl season? And those were kind of the 2 waypoints that a lot of people pointed to sort of say, this is what the Big 12 is. You don't have to worry about that anymore. If Texas and Oklahoma aren't good this year or struggle this year, it won't be a reflection on the Big 12 at all. And I think that's probably to everyone's benefit, because when they were good, it's not like it got that much hype or attention to the conference. It was just like, well, those are special programs. Those are programs that like are exceeding the rest of the conference in every way. So maybe there's a silver lining to it. I don't know. That sounds dreadfully naive of me, I should admit.
No, I've thought a lot about this of like, I think it's okay. And I know from like a TV standpoint, a TV number standpoint, and a making money standpoint, you want the casual viewers. You are going to lose casual viewers because of OU and Texas is exit. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the casual viewers are just going to tune in for the big game, the
Yep.
Alabama
The brand
LSU,
name game. Yep.
and you're going to lose a lot of those unless you have teams late in the season who are ranked in the top 10, and so it's a matchup where people are like, no, you need to watch this because these teams are vying for the playoff, right? And I do think the Big 12 will have some of those because that race will be so interesting down the stretch. Where I think you're going to trade in is more college football diehards and more of the betting audience, because there's so much more. There's going to be so much insanity. There's going to be so much craziness. There's so many games like talking about like it matters more. Like every game's really going to matter in the Big 12 because it's so weird. There's not going to
Yeah.
be 3 or 4 teams that just dominate this conference every single season. Like it really is going to be a wide open conference,
Mm-hmm.
which has already been. Like we've
Yeah.
had in the last 4 Big 12 titles, 7 different teams have made the championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State's the only repeat. And so like this idea that like, well, it's going to be this wide open, well, it's already been that. Even with Oklahoma and Texas in the conference, like it's not something that it's, oh no, now it's going to settle down into 1 or 2 teams going to dominate. No,
Right.
because it's a
Right.
development league that experiments and likes to stay ahead of the curve and on offense or defense to get that everybody copies it and throws 5 stars at it. The SEC just goes, hey, the Big 12 is doing is really successful. Let's take that and just throw 5 stars at it. The Big 12 is like, fine, we'll go do this thing over here so we can beat your 5 stars. Like I just like it's such a fun thing, and I get it for casual people who just watch the big games and aren't like college football fans. That's fine. And if you're a college football fan of your team, you don't watch a lot of other college football much either. You care about your team. But for the people who just like to, like people who love Maction, who love weird games, and the people like you and people that listen to Shutdown Fullcast or listen like me, who's like, I will watch as much as I can. I don't know how you don't watch the Big 12 and be like, yeah, these games are gonna be insane.
Yeah.
Our friend Kelly Ford put out his like teams with the number of like projected 1-score games. Colorado's like number 1 with 10. Was it 7? Oh no, it was 11 Big 12 teams. 11 of the 16 Big 12 teams have 7 or more games
Yeah.
currently projected to be 1-score games.
Yeah. Yeah. Like so here's the downside to it. If you are in this because you like to see a 2019 LSU or a 2021 Georgia, if you're like, I want to see one of the greatest football teams in college football history, it's going to be harder for that to exist in the Big 12.
Yes.
Like that is the trade-off. They like the parity and the distance between top and bottom is a lot narrower, but if you are looking, or even, like a 2000 Oklahoma team, like it's you're probably not going to find that in the Big 12. And that I think goes back to the distinction you're making about like if you are a more casual fan and you are looking for like who are like the top 5 teams and what games are they playing, most week it's probably not going to be a Big 12 team. If you are more interested in like who's fighting for life from like, I don't know, 20 to 35, that ranking, the Big 12 is probably going to do you pretty well.
If you like 2022 TCU,
Yes.
like lots and lots of 1-score wins,
Yes.
goes undefeated, and then makes a playoff run that's out of nowhere. the Big 12 is the conference for you. If you like
Yeah.
2021 Oklahoma State, if you like, because honestly, like we've done the math, like the teams that make the Big 12 championship game, if you want to see teams that win a lot of close games, if you like close games that come down to the wire, you should be watching the Big 12. You should not be watching Alabama win 8 games by 2 or 3 touchdowns,
Right.
or Ohio State running through the Big Ten West. Like, you should be watching the Big 12. If you're just gonna go watch Ohio State pummel Purdue, like, but now on the flip side of that, you're not gonna get the, Kentucky beats #1 ranked undefeated Georgia,
Sure.
right? You're not gonna
Yeah.
get that because you don't have the Georgia for that to be a thing. So we're not
Yes.
gonna hear
Yes.
about the
Like
biggest
Kansas.
upsets in college football is
Right. Right.
like,
Kansas is not going to beat Texas.
oh no, I know.
And it was really fun when Kansas beat Texas. It was really
Oh,
fun. It was really fun when Kansas State was consistently beating Texas. And you're right.
Charlie Strong beat Texas. Okay, can't be that hard.
Like, you're right. Those are the things that are going to. I mean, the other downside to this is, I think, inevitably going to be, and we haven't seen it too badly, but it feels like it's going to start to creep up. Um, I feel like non-conference schedules are really going to start to shrink. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the SEC eventually is like, okay, we have to go to a 9-game um conference schedule for everybody. I feel like the incentive to play interesting non-conference games is going to go away a little bit. Um, Arizona brought their rival with them. Utah has their rival already there. Colorado will keep playing Colorado State. Maybe the Nebraska series will keep going. But I think there is going to be a little bit of like, one thing I think that the Big 12 had done a pretty good job of was giving us, not just at the top, but all through the lineup, like, okay, let's watch Kansas, Illinois, or let's watch Oklahoma, Tennessee before that was a conference game. And I have a feeling those things will be fewer and farther between as we keep going.
Yeah, that's more of a reflection on college football that stinks. Is
Yes.
like I talked about this on the show last week. I'm like, the Big 12's got to do a better job in non-conference scheduling, but like week 1 used to be used to be big,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it's not. 11 Big 12 teams are playing FCS teams in week 1.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to
Yeah.
complain about college football. I'm going to watch it. Like, I'll take
Yeah.
whatever you're going to give me. But like, if you're going to own Labor Day weekend, like, then own Labor Day weekend.
Right.
Like, let's or make week 0 a thing, and so that becomes, we get more week 0 that's FCS and whatever, and then we get week 1 and Labor Day weekend being a
Mm-hmm.
marquee thing again, because
Mm-hmm.
like we've got to
Mm-hmm.
get. And then week 2's loaded. And that's the thing, is like week 2's loaded. So let's just make week 0 a thing, so we get more good stuff on week 1, because it's the second game of the season for a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then we have a whole weekend of marquee stuff, as opposed to everyone's got a week 2 game that's big. And I'm trying to figure out how to watch 4 of them in a day.
Right.
And
Right.
I want to watch 20, but okay. We'll wrap up on this. When you joined us last year, we ended on or talked about like what would be the funniest Big 12 title game matchups, and you had some good West Virginia jokes for us, and I appreciated that. So now I have to end this on the same thing, Ryan. What would be the funniest Big 12 championship game matchup in Arlington in December?
God.
Be warned, I'm gonna like clip this and put it everywhere.
No, yeah. This is all right. I I feel like I have to put UCF in there. Like, it's still just, UCF is a lot of fun, and UCF it could go on that run this year. UCF has to play Florida. They might beat Florida this year. I'm processing that on my own time. Thank you. But I think if you put UCF in the Big 12 championship game in Texas, it immediately sends some like, what the hell is going on here? And if I have to pair them with somebody, I know they play in the regular season. I know we already talked about it, but yeah, I think give me Colorado. Like, I think this would just make so many people mad, because you have new money Big 12 and UCF, that it's sort of like, we just took you because we needed to like stop the bleeding, How dare you? You have Colorado in all of its current Colorado-ness coming in. And like I I think people need to reckon with what we know what Colorado looked like going 4-8 last year. If Colorado flips the script and goes 9-3 or 10-2 this year, I don't think we were really prepared. Like I would I would stay as far away from a Deion Sanders press conference as you possibly can in that situation. But like I think what really entices me about a Colorado UCF Big 12 championship game is it would get a lot of attention, which is something the conference has to want. But if you're a legacy member of the conference, you have to be like, I hate this so much. I hate everything that's happening here. And worst of all, it's not even a good clash of colors. It's not even a good color matchup on television.
We would have to force UCF to wear the Citronaut colors
Yes,
in
they'd
that
have to wear
game.
their like
Like
special space
you
uniforms for the
can't
game
both
or
do
something.
black and gold.
No,
Like
no.
you're gonna wear your Citronaut blue and
Yeah,
white UCF, and
yeah.
Colorado can wear like black and gold. We can't have two black and gold. I think I really liked Andy Staples put out his like 16 team playoff or 14 team playoff or 12. I don't know how many teams in the playoff anymore. And it had two Big 12 reps, and it was West Virginia and UCF. And I was just like, oh, can you imagine two essentially East Coast teams playing a conference championship game in Arlington, Texas? Is that like that's the most like it was like no, you didn't take this step far enough. Those two teams would have
Yeah,
probably played each other in a Big
yeah,
12 title, and that might be one of the funniest things I could possibly imagine is West Virginia and UCF. And it has nothing to do like against either team because I really like UCF this year. I
yeah,
think Garrett Green's
yeah.
gonna be fun for West Virginia. And it's just like that it goes back to the like, what's the funniest matchup you can think of? Two East Coast teams in Dallas playing a conference championship game in the Big 12.
Can I give you Cincinnati, West Virginia, Big 12
Oh
championship?
my goodness. Beautiful. It's not a rivalry. It's not a rivalry.
No.
Ryan, Ryan, absolute pleasure. It was worth the wait. Thank you so much for hopping in here. Obviously, plug the Shutdown Fullcast, but I know that you and Stephen Godfrey, Split Zone Duo, have been working on a air quotes again because podcasting is a visual medium.
Yeah.
Secret project. Plug it all, man.
Keep an eye out for it. We don't have anything to point you towards yet. We're working on it very hard. It's going to be, I think, a very fun project that, how can I describe it? Will help you sort of reckon with everything that has changed about college football in whatever time frame you want to define. Like we're going all the way back to, in some cases, the 1960s. So, it's hopefully going to be a fun, informative and maybe helpful look at how much the sport has changed and why, and the people that have made all of those changes. And yeah, other than that, thank you for having me. And if I will say this, if we get a West Virginia Cincinnati Big 12 championship game, I'll come to that game. I'll,
Oh
I'll
yeah,
come watch that in Arlington.
yeah. We'll get you back on here because that would be. Can I just say that as someone who listens to both Shutdown Fullcast and SZD, that cross, if you were to do the like two pod
Yeah.
crossover thing, I'm pretty sure all of us who listen to both are on an FBI watch list somewhere. So
Yeah, but
just
it's probably not a like danger watch list. It's the like, oh man, watch
just
list.
just keep both shows going if you wouldn't mind, because I'm afraid what our hobbies would be if we didn't have fewer
I
shows
can
to
do
listen
that.
to. Yeah.
I can serve our country in that way.